Oh no, y'all got me surrounded. Guess that's just game over, man. Yep, game over. I ain't stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me. Welcome to Chapter 2 of the Steam Quest, my journey through Thunderful Games' entire, almost, Steamworld catalog. In our last visit, we played a fun, but short, first entry into the series. Today, we're going to see what Thunderful can really do. We're looking for one thing above all: growth. Growth of scope, growth of ideas, and growth of skill. Repeating the same game by different names, or numbers, or just repeating the same game might be profitable, but if you can't innovate and improve, the consequences will come home. As illustrated before, Thunderful has taken this to heart. They have changed their genres 3 times in their first 3 games, while still staying committed to their curious, steampunk western world. Game 1 was a tower defense pitting steambots against the drunken remnants of humanity. In Game 2, humanity is defeated and steambots are living their best lives while a mysterious threat grows beneath the surface. And in Game 3, the whole world blew up. Welcome to Steamworld Heist. In case it isn't obvious, changing genres so rapidly is a risk. While Steamworld Dig was good, it didn't have the polish and depth I'd expect from an experienced developer. By the book, they should have made another tower defense. Pivoting a second time, now to tactics, is yeeting that book into the air for target practice. But damn if it didn't work. This is Thunderful's first honest-to-goodness masterpiece and shows what they can do firing on all cylinders. Before we get into that though, let's set the stage. Meet Piper Faraday, smuggler, thief, and gun for hire. Piper is the captain of, okay, bear with me. Piper's ship is never named, but her pilot is a steambot who is attached to the ship in a way that is implied to be permanent. So may I suggest that the ship and pilot are one, and Piper is captain of the good ship Wonky. From the opening level, we can see the progress. Thunderful's penchant for beautiful, half-seen backgrounds returns with a constant view of the shattered Earth. The detail in the environments have been stepped up a notch too. So have the crew animations, which on defeat scatter into modular parts that react to gravity and physics. In today's episode, Piper and crew have boarded a ship of scrappers, a gang of brutal ruffians known for stealing water, equipment, and even ripping parts off other steambots. Scrapper ships look like junk at first, but on closer look, much of the junk was once someone's arm, leg, or head. So take a moment to pretend these weren't robots, and suddenly the scrappers are a bit more sadistic than your average bully. Heist is great at giving you enemies that you just really like shooting. After getting herself and her lone surviving crewmate, an old whaling bot named Seabrass, safely back on Wonky, Piper sets out to find the leader of the scrappers and put an end to the threat. Which in the tradition of video game stories is only the first step in a long sequence of conflicts that will, by the end, decide the fate of the Steam world. And I'm gonna be frank with you here, the story is not that interesting. Sorry, it's got a lot of characters, they have interesting designs, but there is no development at all. Which for me means I didn't get as invested as Heist as I wanted to, and I really wanted to, because whatever was lacking in the story department was overwhelmingly made up in the gameplay. So you know what, let's talk about that. The fun of tactics games is in the evolving plans and execution. Identifying the difference between strategy and tactics is a little above my pay grade, but my experience is that strategy is large scale and tactics are small scale, which is probably why I like tactics better. As in most games of the genre, you're given between 1 and 4 characters who are dropped into a starting zone with a set of criteria to achieve victory. There will be opposing forces, but you won't know where and who they are until the encounter starts. Breaking from tradition, Heist is played on a 2D side-scrolling plane. This was a very impactful choice. First and foremost, gravity is now a concern. Steambots can jump down from ledges, but they can't jump up to them. So when you're repositioning, you may have more options from above than you do from below. Also, several weapons, and some enemies, are designed with gravity in mind. Lobbing grenades or bombs can let you bypass enemy barricades, but be careful. If you miscalculate your throw, it could bounce harmlessly away or into Seabrass's face. The 2D format also presents more options on how to approach a fight. Several of Heist's weapons have a small chance for critical hits, but if that weapon hits the enemy head, the chance becomes 50%. So headshots are always the best target. But what if you're underneath that enemy? Well, the chance is smaller, but a shot to the legs could cripple an enemy for a turn, preventing them from seeking a better position. This would be hard to implement in a top-down game, You'd need a separate control to handle elevation, switch into first-person mode, or just leave it all up to the f***ing RNG. Which brings us to Heist's best innovation, and the thing that made this game so much more engaging than your typical tactics game: doing away with the f***ing RNG. Now, not completely, most weapons have a range of damage, which is up to chance, but the spread is rarely more than 3, so you can more easily plan for success. No, where the RNG is entirely removed is in the aiming. Humans are imperfect and prone to messing things up. Games simulate this through a percentage chance of failure. Anyone who's ever missed a sectoid's head with a 98% chance of success knows what I'm talking about. In Heist, players manually aim their Steambot's gun. There is a slight unsteadiness to the aim to give some chance of failure, but, all in all, it's a skill-based combat system. If you miss, it's on you. In addition, most projectiles bounce off walls. Ricocheting bombs and bullets doesn't just make for entertaining shootouts, those trick shots could be your only hope of salvaging a mission. Fights in Heist are so much less frustrating than the usual tactics game and present the player with more options on how they play out. Moments where everything falls apart for reasons beyond your control are very rare, and with so many weapon and gear options, there's usually another backup plan you can try. By the way, my first playthrough was on Experienced mode, which was a ton of fun, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel a little easy. I've since started Veteran mode and am finding the challenge much more engaging. But of course the ne'er-do-wells on the outskirts aren't just going to sit still while you pick them off, so how does the game actually play? There are 3 factions in Steamworld Heist. 4 if you count the Cowbots, which is kind of Piper's faction. At least that's who she's fighting for, but since Piper's crew is the highest form of motley, they don't really count. We only need to talk about the first 2 for gameplay purposes. The third is kind of a spoiler, not that the ads or reviews have ever cared about that. Here's the thing about a heist. It's stealing. It's a quick grab. It's not a conquest, and it's not a battle of honor. With the exception of very specific boss battles, there is no "I won" moment. You don't declare victory in a heist, you get away with the loot. That mentality is central to Steamworld Heist's design. Every mission has an objective. Acquire a minimum amount of swag, take out some dangerous enemies, sabotage a ship. Whatever it is, you don't have to control the whole map to do it. In fact, some missions can be completed in very little time, which is good because, clock's ticking. Most, though not all missions have a timer. When the timer expires, reinforcements arrive. At first, this might be the spawning of security turrets, but dilly-dally too long, and you'll get increasingly large mobs of enemies spawning in the ship and gunning for you. Push your luck, and you could find yourself overwhelmed with no way out. One mission type just puts you on a ship and tells you to grab as much loot as you can before the situation becomes dire. Dividing your forces is risky, but necessary if you want that money. Sending 2 in one direction and a third in the other increases your yield, but also increases the chance of both parties being taken out. So, why would you do it? Certain crewmates, weapons, and shops only open up if you earn their respect. Each stage you complete offers 2 reputation. Each crewmate you lose costs 1 reputation. But somewhere on the ship, granted it's often with the boss but hear me out, is an epic chest. This chest is worth 1 reputation point on its own, and if that's not enough motivation, it will also hold a rare weapon or a valuable item. Something that can bring your crew's performance from ordinary to extraordinary. And you will need those guns because enemies are varied and aggressive. Some scrappers wield crowbar bayonets to smash barricades, while others carry heavy-duty shields to prevent assaults from head-on. Some royalists have no attack at all save to summon more royalists, while others wield heavy knives that do immense damage if they get close. It's an excellent system for managing tension. At the start, everyone is healthy and you have all your extra gear, but by the time you complete the objective, you might be on your last legs with a scrapped crewmate and empty ammo bags. It's worth noting that if you fail, you lose a percentage of your water, which is what Steambots use for money, and will have to try again. If you win though, you can still try again and get extra XP or extra reputation. And you will need that reputation, because at the end of the day, Piper is a smuggler and part-time pirate, not the kind of person the floating colonies of Cowbots are going to trust with defeating oppression and tyranny. If you want their help, you'll have to prove you're worthy of it. Which brings us to our own little story section, which, counter to usual, won't have that many spoilers and will have a bit more speculation on the nature of the Steam world and Steambots in general. But if you are concerned about spoilers, feel free to mosey on down to this timestamp where we'll talk about the final linchpin in Steamworld Heist's amazing combat system. So let's run through this real quick. Piper faces off against the Scrappers. She learns that their boss, Chop Suey, has acquired a powerful artifact that lets her raise new Steambots from the scrapped remains of dead ones, turning her into a Techromancer. Hey, I didn't make the name. Anyways, Piper's crew defeats Suey. Searching for answers takes them into Royalist space, where they learn that the Red Queen is keeping an alien being captive. This being likely gave Suey her power, and the Queen wants to use its knowledge to restore the Earth. They've so far been trying to hold it together with massive chains, but I guess that hasn't been working. So Piper defeats the Queen because she's an oppressor and a tyrant, and frees the captive alien, which turns out to be Vectron. You know, Vectron, the Voltbot from Steamworld Dig. Now it's a hive mind, controlling lots of Voltbots, and it's still planning to annihilate all the Steambots. Some people never change, you know? After making their way through deep space, the crew faces off against Vectron and puts it down once and for all. Probably. It clearly survived Rusty's attempt to put it down back in the first game, so who really knows for sure. After that, a black hole opens which you can use to start New Game Plus. There's also a DLC which unlocks a new crewmate who appears to be a hybrid of Steambot and Voltbot. And there you go, story section over. Yeah, it was around the Royalist section when I realized I wasn't invested in Piper's story. It's not bad, it's just not as exceptional as the gameplay is. The hook isn't great, and the one twist was predictable. And that's unfortunate, because that was also a problem with Dig. Heist improves on so much, but the writing still needs work. I mean, take the undead robots. What does that concept even mean? How would that impact the world? Why wasn't it explored further? The whole game should have been built around this concept. A robotic zombie apocalypse gaining strength and overwhelming those who thought they could control it. That would just be genius. I should be writing this stuff. So anyways, yeah, story lackluster. But that doesn't mean we're given nothing, because Thunderful's world building still gives us insight into Steambot life. So in the first game, we learned that the Steambot lifecycle is imitative of our own. Here we learn that Steambot growth is also self-determined. Instead of growing according to DNA, Steambots select new parts for themselves as they mature. Their adult forms reflect who they wanted to grow up to be, which means that Wonky wanted to be a spaceship when he was a kid, and he did. This is why techromancy, the practice of creating new Steambots from the scrapped remains of old ones, is considered so evil. Personalities exist within those parts, so putting multiple personalities in one robot leads to, well, insanity, as evidenced by these scrappers who exist mainly to blow themselves up. This is really fascinating in the context of gender. Steambots reproduce by building baby Steambots. There's nothing worth worrying about between their legs. Some of them don't even have legs, and yet they very frequently address one another in terms of a male-female spectrum and choose their appearances to match that. We still haven't actually seen a child yet, nor have we seen a romantic pairing, so a lot about this process remains a mystery, as is how Steambots age. The sniper Valentine is recruited after he left an old bot's home in search of adventure in his later years. But what is it that grows old? When a crewmate is killed in a mission, they're repaired back on Wonky, and this is not consequence-free. Seabrass mentions losing memories after death, but they can be repaired, even from destruction. So what is it that grows old? Well, we might never know for sure. And there is one thing that we haven't touched on at all yet. In the first game, the remnants of humanity were a deranged, degenerative lot who could barely look after themselves on a day-to-day basis, let alone rebuild their society. Now, an uncertain number of years into the future, what could possibly be left of them? Now, if you're a human sympathizer, there is some hope for their survival. Since they're based on combustion, Steambots require both oxygen and water to survive. If environment still exists to support them, they could support humans too. And the end card showing a Shiner wearing a bubble helmet and spacesuit suggests they are probably still around in some capacity, as do the specimens Vectron is keeping in glass tubes, though whether they're alive or pickled remains to be seen. But all in all, humans aren't a part of Steambot life anymore, which might be why the different factions have started to turn on one another over the remaining resources, particularly the Royalists, who have dealt with the water shortage by turning to diesel power and now have a rather racist view of their steam-driven brethren. Now the Royalists and Vectron are all defeated in Heist, but both Dieselbots and Voltbots still exist, so who knows where the mechanical species will go from here. And what exactly happened to the Earth anyways? Like the apocalypse that brought about the Steambot age, its nature is left in the dark. All we know for sure is that the Royalists are trying to restore it, and that the Voltbots might have had a role in its destruction. But those stories, like so much, will have to wait for another tale. Which brings us right back around and out of spoiler territory. It will keep you alive even if you are an inch from death, but it will be a half-life. A cursed life. Welcome back. I already went over the general combat system, but that's only half the battle. The other half is the class/hero system. Every crewmate has a class and a certain style of play they're meant to embody. Sentries are meant to be forward-thinking snipers. They get a damage bonus if they don't move, so get them in the right position and they will shred your enemies on your next turn. Vanguards are tanks and bruisers. Whenever a Vanguard is hurt, they get the payback status effect. Their next attack will do double damage to their opponent. Using them effectively means keeping their health up while letting them take enough damage to rip enemies apart. Flankers actually add another dimension to the targeting system. If a flanker hits an enemy's rear, they do extra damage. This encourages covering all sides of a fight instead of just one. Now Piper, the captain, gets to be her own class, and in her case she provides buffs and support to crewmates who are nearby. This means extra damage, and also the ability to fully heal everyone in range, all while still handling sharpshooter weapons for effective headshots. But it doesn't end there. Even within classes there are varieties of playstyle. Seabrass and Ivansky are both vanguards who get extra damage when hurt. Seabrass mitigates this with a self-heal, and retaliates with a double shot. Ivansky, on the other hand, is a tank in purest form, with an ability that makes him temporarily invincible while taunting nearby enemies to target him. Then take Payroll, whose speed lets him quickly reach the other side of the map for flank damage. He can also opt to fire after a sprint, which no other bot can do. Contrast that with Dora di Aventura, whose mobility is more limited but whose sharpshooter weapons let her strike at an enemy's rear from anywhere on the map. If she can find an angle, that is. And then there's the Bounty Hunter, embodied by Sally Bolt. Sally's key ability is Kill Shot. If she makes a kill, she gets a second shot. But once you get her the special ability Mad Dog, Sally goes from Dorothy Gale to John Wick. So where do you take the classes from here? You equip them. This game is chock full of a variety of weapon types. Pistols, for example, do more damage than sharpshooters, but sacrifice the laser sight, which makes targeting easier. But if you're good enough at predicting trajectories, maybe you don't need the help. You can have both at once with sniper weapons, but those can't be used after you move. Which might be fine if you're running Valentine, since staying still gives him even more damage. Speaking of sentries, Beatrix gets the same buff to damage Valentine does when she doesn't move, but instead of wielding pistols, she wields ordnance. So if her positioning is right, she can take out a whole crowd at once. But rockets and bombs don't really ricochet, and splash damage makes them hard to use in a tight situation. Then there are special weapons like the Harpoon, which gives you a bonus to damage and a laser sight for targeting, and you can move before you shoot it, but it can't ricochet. Weapons in this game lead to a lot of fascinating interactions with character abilities. And don't forget about the gear. Is Valentine in a bad spot and needs to move? Well, better run him with a sidearm so he can still fight even if he can't use his rifle. Planning to run with Billy, but worried he can't outrun his enemies. Slap some speed boots on to make his headbutt and run tactics more effective. There are so many different offense and defense and utility tools that you can pick and choose from to optimize your team. And finally, we have the hats. Hats serve no purpose in the game. Unless you're a glory hound, because every enemy is wearing a hat, and if you manage to hit it without hitting the enemy, you'll knock that hat free. Pick it up, and you can equip it to any Steambot in future missions. It's totally cosmetic, it wastes a turn, and yet there is something compelling when you see that pirate hat and think, you know what? I think Sally deserves a new look. At the end of this, we have what I consider to be Thunderful's first real masterpiece. Well, except for the narrative, which still needs work. But if Tower Defense and Dig were proving they could make games, Heist proved they can take a concept, expand on it, innovate on it, and produce a high-quality experience that anyone who enjoys turn-based tactics should play. And that's Steamworld Heist. My steamy new game— No, we are not calling it that. Go away, come back with something better. Thanks for playing, everyone.
Come with me, I'll show you how to be a metal man. When the gears are turning and the fires are burning, when the world takes a